During the executive session, no action taken. So next item is authorizing staff to initiate an RFQ to retain a living consultant. Slide on this.
Yes, 1 moment. There we are.
All right, so I'll take this one. So at our last senior center levy planning meeting, we had board members bring up and revived our levy consultant RFP. And
Oh,
can you guys hear me? Can you hear me?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, am I talking to myself? And so we, me and Barbara went through the previous RFP, and we kind of stripped away all of the things that we thought we could keep in-house, just so that we can have like a more tight scope of work. And so we had, is there a list of the scope on the next slide? Yep. So we have 6 things that are on our main scope, which are develop the strategies to successfully pass the capital repairs levy, assess similar ballot measures and results to devise an election strategy, facilitate outreach and engagement with other member agencies, staff, and stakeholder groups, craft language for ballot measures and the pros and cons committee, and then draft content for NPRSA leadership and community partners to share the information regarding the ballot measure, and then putting together a final report. We had Kim from Madrona, who looked over our RFP just to make sure that we were in line with what we could do as a public entity as far as the levy consultant in the election strategy. So we're all good there. She signed off on that. Are there any questions, or do we need to have any further discussion on the need for this? Did everybody get to look over it? We actually did the RFP so that we could you all could hopefully approve this, and then staff could go right on out to public bid for this so that we could get the process started. So are there any questions or any comments or anything like that?
So if we did approve this evening and went forward, what would the timeline be for the RFP process and getting someone on board and starting?
So it looks like tentatively we would have, let me see, we would have
the contract for you in November.
Yeah.
It's right.
It would go pretty fast. We would just and the way that we've done it previously is staff goes through the RFP process, and then we do the interviews with all the respondents, and then we bring those back to the board, report to the board, give feedback on the interviews, and then the board would then choose who they would like to move forward with, and then we would start negotiating the contract, and then hopefully have the board approve the contract at the November meeting. So
Just to tag on to that question, I mean, what would be the timeline for the work, I guess, is what I thought you were going for there.
Oh,
you know,
sorry.
would be engagement and
So the timeline for the work, I don't think we have specific deliverable timelines built into the RFP. That would go in the contract, but it does mention in the RFP that we expect all work to be completed, obviously, in time for the November election next year. I think the final report might come after. If I recall correctly, we said 1 year from the date of mutual execution, which is going to be around the time. It's going to be November, so it'll be after.
Did you ask in the RFP to have a time, schedule laid out in their response and things like that? I mean, we would want that.
yes.
In the response. Okay. And the only other question I had was I've maybe read this too quickly, but I saw $120,000. Is that seems like more than we had originally talked about, but
That's the high end of what we originally talked about, just for
Yeah.
budgeting purposes. We sort of want to make sure we have room in our budget.
Okay, but we're not putting a figure out, right?
No,
We're-
no,
it's-
absolutely not.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get
Absolutely
at.
not.
Okay. Anything else?
So I've been reluctant on this just because at the county, it's not been my experience. And you all may have more experience, but we had passed a motion asking last time. I think, what was the motion? I would bring back information on what. I heard you say, so number one, I heard you say that council has apparently reviewed this list of activities and blessed it. Is that correct?
Not exactly.
Okay, because let me say, Barbara, it gives me great pause as I read this. I feel like we are proposing to spend public money on strategies to successfully pass a capital levy ballot measure.
No, our
We
council
can't-
has approved this. We
Okay,
sent
yeah.
this over to our legal counsel, yes.
Okay, well, Barbara was giving me a different message there. And
No, oh, council like SEL, not
Yeah,
CIO. I'm sorry. Yes, our legal counsel has approved this list. Yes. Okay.
now it goes to devise an election strategy. I have great discomfort at this language on spending public dollars on it. Doing technical work like coordinating with city councils, what would go in a package, drafting the language, although this council could do that legal council did that last time. If you're a lawyer, or I guess she's our lawyer.
Yeah, they're
I'm not being a lawyer. I'm not insured. My bar card's active, but I'm not being a lawyer. I'm being an elected official here. If it legal is one thing, but even if it's legal, it makes me very uncomfortable.
Is there-
I'm just giving you my.
Sorry.
reason.
Is there an
Is there-
alternate verbiage that you would be more comfortable with?
I would, yeah, I would.
Because we could change that really easily.
Mhm.
I guess I don't believe public funds should be spent developing election strategies. That tells me that's campaigning to me. I read that as
Wow.
campaigning.
That
We
is-
do that
we
in
do
cities
that.
though, like
Yeah.
also currently our safe streets levy,
We do.
public safety levy. I don't-
Absolutely.
Christine, what did we copy this language from? This is from
We
a
copied-
Bothell.
So, yeah, so I took language from a bunch of other public, we had Bothell's, and then I used also a capital, the city of Tacoma's capital RFP for their whole capital investment levy that they just did. So
And we
I
did
just-
it for waterways and walkways. We used a consultant. I mean, they basically did it. And I know we do it internally for like the mid and BSK. I mean, I was involved in strategy and that's definitely using public funds.
It's not a
So,
partisan thing. It's not like
It's
Bush
not a
War.
campaign
It's like
either.
do we want to, as a community, do we want this or not?
and you have the yes campaign separate from that.
Yeah,
The NPRSA role is the information. So it's like, how do you build the information packet?
okay.
So
I see election
yeah.
strategy, campaign, pass, renew.
Yeah.
I would just say for the record, any work, I don't believe we can or should pay for what I'm reading there as election year.
Okay.
If it's strategy on the merits, building the package, what does the community want? What is
Yeah.
the project? What's the about? That's all. Okay, no problem,
Okay,
obviously,
okay.
right? So I may just be reading that and being very concerned
Yes.
about that. But
So
I may
maybe
be
we-
reading more into it than it's being meant to convey.
So should we change then the word just to say ballot measure strategy? Is it the specific election? Is that where the hangup is? Where it's because it says election strategy, that's where it's misconstrued as like maybe campaigning, but I'm just
You don't
trying
have
to
to
think
change
of
it
a
on my
way.
account. I just want these minutes to reflect my concern and
Okay.
position. And if the words aren't meant to convey that, then it won't happen, right? Because you're not going to
Yeah.
use it.
No.
I will say
Maybe one member misreading. Yeah.
number 4 is reassuring to soliciting pro and con. We're not,
Yeah.
we're not saying we are only doing for like pro stuff. We're
I think it's maybe just, it's number 1 and number 2 that have that, they do, it's the tone of them.
All the other stuff. is,
Yeah.
If we strike pass from 1, so it's develop strategies to successfully renew a capital repairs levy ballot measure,
There you go.
and change 2 to assess similar ballot measures and results to devise a levy strategy.
Yeah,
Does that
I like
satisfy
it.
your concerns?
Sure. To inform the levy, maybe.
to inform a levy strategy.
Yeah.
To inform.
Okay, got it. We'll
We
make
will
that
make
change.
those changes.
It's the
Yeah.
background that you're
Like
gathering.
the first one always be assist the board in
To
development.
change it, we would need a motion and a second, right?
Well, we'd have that whenever we're asking you to approve the RFP. So we'll just have the motion be like approved as amended or something
Yeah.
like that.
We need it.
What about using the phrase, consider viability to pass or renew repairs levy ballot measures? Because the strategies are ultimately what you're trying to do is decide whether or not it's something that's going to be doable, right? And so if you were to say something like consider viability of making that,
I think we
on
can
the
just,
repairs.
just simplify. I mean, I like the way you said, yeah, right. I mean, exactly.
Help the board develop a levy package.
Yeah.
More generic.
Develop a plan for the next levy.
Would you be comfortable with that?
So,
That didn't sound really.
No, I wouldn't, I need to edit your line, but all I think we should be careful in. And we're not gonna use public resources for it. We want to have a package that's responsive to needs, right, all that. I just feel how we should say
That's
it.
okay, we can dial it down
Yeah.
and still.
Well, and if some in the room are reading it that way, then others are
Yeah,
gonna be
there's-
doing it that
I
way.
might be the only one.
no, sure, you
Oh,
can
okay.
the only way. Yeah.
Notes on that too, specifically in the memo as well. There's some language. In the RFP itself, it sounded a little bit better too, but as long as legal counsels talked about this, I mean, it did pop up for me too, so I know that was something I talked about in the Senate.
And as you mentioned at the counties, does it come up? And it does in our cities. Sometimes the council member will just have a call with the city attorney and be like, walk me through this. And that might be an option too, especially since you guys speak some of the same language. But, because that can be a big help. But I'm fine with the adjustments because I want everyone to be comfortable.
So that we make sure we capture it. Can we say one more time what the changes we want to items 1 and 2 are so that I can write them down and make sure that the verbiage matches what we're the consensus we're reading.
Develop a plan for the next levy cycle.
Develop
It's really what it is.
That's great.
Flexibility, yeah.
plan.
That's great.
Well, it's,
I guess it's development. So,
Yeah, it's the ballot measure, not the legislature. So develop a plan for an upcoming ballot measure.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
Or assist the board in developing. The report.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Assist the board in developing,
A levy renewal proposal.
there you go.
There we go.
Does that work?
Yes, levy renewal. That's-
Right by
that's
committee.
better.
We are rule number 1, aren't we?
Assist the board in developing a plan for an upcoming
Levy renewal.
levy renewal.
Yeah.
Okay, and then 2, what did we want to change in item 2?
I can just cut it. I mean, because that's part of developing that.
We're gonna put a period after results.
Okay.
So similar ballot measures and results, period.
All right,
Yeah.
I like
There
that.
could be some helpful information.
I think that is an important aspect to leave in. Yeah,
Well, I
and
think
the other ones, I think the rest of them
Yeah.
are okay. Yeah.
Okay,
Two was basically to make sure we're not competing with a bunch of others.
exactly.
Oh, right. Okay.
For the board's information, there will be a county EMS renewal levy in November. That's what we're looking at.
Well, since I didn't read to that, so if that's what we're talking about, so we want to say something about concurrent, because they may not be similar ballot measures.
Oh, you're
They
right.
may be.
Let's say similar or concurrent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
because I didn't read it that way.
I didn't, that's what we were seeking there.
Oh, okay.
Can we
All right.
call out it's gonna be different hospital districts, different
Mhm.
counties, different, like, just make sure that in the RFP, they know the
Okay.
scope of
EG, right?
EG.
You got Snohomish County, you got.
So the city leverages an EMS levy just county.
Okay, so are we good?
We're good with this? Lovely.
So do we need a,
So we need a motion and a second to authorize staff to initiate the RFP process to retain a levy consultant as amended.
well, okay, yeah. A second. This is just authorizing them to retain the levy consultants. Get into the minutia. But, yeah, any discussion?
This to me, I'm going with my colleagues here who think, here I still have concerns, but maybe I'm stuck in the old fashioned way that, desperate, we said, pass a nickel, we had a list of projects. I think the staff's done an excellent job of identifying what needs to be done. I think I think I kind of know where we'll be in the nickel range, and I would hope that we can be very judicious in the spending. I think 120,000 would really send me over.
Right. And
So all those are things that we don't spend here, but I've heard you all that you think there's value that you have convinced me that, it makes sense to see what.
I have a question. Can you go back to the one slide just to back to the list? Because I think it is covered what Councilmember Navasky talked about, but or was in the actual RFP or something. But I mean, that is a key piece, is the sensitivity to of the community to the rate. So that's going to be a piece of
That's going to be part of.
because it's not exactly called out in those, but
I don't know how they'll do that. I bet all
well, you
of us
just
have-
survey. I mean, when we've had consultants, they actually do surveys and they ask questions that lead to knowing a little bit more about the community and what their tolerance is for. Anything else?
I would just say, I think we're still gonna need, we use Ken Williams, also we need council to make sure we meet the deadlines. So the content, right, of the actual measure, putting a resolution together of this board. And there's summaries that have to be prepared. We have obviously 2 election departments, deadlines, all that stuff. And I don't know, we might need council to help with that. I don't know if it's the right best person.
Staff know what the deadlines are. We have some time to work with. And our legal counsel said that they will review anything that we want. But they have done work as sort of a levy consultant role in the past. But
I mean, just there are state law requirements for the explanatory statement. How many words say?
They vary.
Yeah.
It's fun.
mm,
Different due dates.
And we have 2 different counties with different
different
with
rules.
different
I would
dates
just
that are
probably
due.
encourage
So
us-
so staff does have a schedule. We have a schedule where we've marked all these different dates. We can send that over to you all of when everything is due and kind of like our strategy and like staff strategy. But we kind of just we threw it together just on what we could find, on the county websites and then what was done in the past. So neither of us are levy experts, so we're trying hard.
Thank you for your flexibility.
It's a group thing. I appreciate all that. I think we should retain counsel to do this work. Ken and Williams helped us last time. It's technical. We don't want to mess it up. We could have the best plan in the world. And if we mess it up and it doesn't get to the voters, we're going to have $0.
Yeah.
And so I think it'd just be money well spent.
And having someone who worked with us before is
Sure.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table.
He has the forms.
Yeah. It's been seconded. Let's call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, next item, 2025 capital repairs plan.
All right, so we gave a preliminary capital repairs plan at the July meeting. We only had one of these on there, which was the health and wellness crawl space repair. So that was budgeted at $500,000. And we had some groundwater coming up and we've been monitoring it over the last couple of years. We did a study on it. And we have a repair plan made. And so we want to go ahead and do that repair in 2025. And then we added the health and wellness grease trap replacement. So back a few years ago, the senior center identified that their grease trap for their commercial kitchen was not functioning. It was not an issue at the time because they were not utilizing the kitchen, the commercial kitchen. And so the senior center programming has changed recently where they need to have that kitchen functioning. And so we investigated that last year and determined that the entire unit needs to be replaced. And so we think that coupling this repair with the crawl space repair could save money on mobilization, as basically it's in-ground work and it's in the same area. So we think it makes sense to just go ahead and do it in 2025. This was one of the projects that was on the future levy project list. So we were going to look at repairing this either way. We're just moving it forward, and our budget allows for the $250K because we tried to keep the capital repairs pretty low key for 2025, as we're going to be doing the preparations for the ballot measure.
Any questions about this item? Do we need a motion?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I'll entertain that motion.
So moved.
This is a motion to approve 2025 capital repairs plan. Any questions? Hey, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. 2025 preliminary budget.
Okay, so this is a refined version of what we showed you all in July. We're going to have sort of the final budget for approval in November for our public hearing, but we wanted to give you a chance to look at this as we have more updated numbers, because we obviously increased the scope of the capital repairs plan slightly. We're adding the levy consultant back in. So this is just the general fund balance. We're expecting monies in all other funds to be completely expended by the end of 25. We're looking to close out the old bond fund this year by charging some of the costs for repairs to this building to that fund. And then obviously the grant fund we're expecting to have expended at the end of the grant, or the current youth center study. So some highlights: projected general fund starting balance is close to $1 million even. We have $750,000 of estimated capital repair costs, another $175,000 of estimated professional services fees. That includes both design work for those two projects and the levy consultant we've been discussing, excuse me. We have the annual administrative services fees, which is Christine and Becky's salaries and benefits. And then other expenses. The reason other expenses is so high this year is because that includes about $80,000 of election fees. So the money it costs to put stuff on the ballot and all that sort of thing. So by the time you couple that with our senior center reimbursements, our legal fees, our sort of miscellaneous stuff, you end up with a significantly higher number on that line than we historically have had. We're anticipating $1,565,500 roughly in tax revenue. $16,000 in ILA contributions, same as always, and probably around $5,000 in other revenue from interest and that sort of thing. When you add all that up, we are expecting to end 2025 with about $1.25 million in the bank, slightly more than we started with, and a pretty healthy reserve in case something goes terribly wrong next November and we need to adjust our strategy for a 2026 election potentially. Our final budget will have precise numbers for all these. It won't be quite as generous estimates. And it's also going to reflect all of our final Q3 revenue and expenses, which we're still obviously waiting on September numbers for that. Any questions about that? I know I sort of rushed through it.
Thank you very much for the presentation, preliminary budget. I have a question about the interlocal agreement contributions. It feels like a legacy term from a few years ago. Put together. I know that sometimes it's cumbersome to cough that small check up out of our budget. I don't know how your jurisdictions feel about it. Do we, given what the effort and cost around 1, 2, 5 governments
Yeah.
to get $16,000 in the
Yeah.
processing, is there any interest, we don't have to answer just now, but would there be any interest among the participating jurisdictions of amending the interlocal to stop collecting this $16,000?
I think
And
that's
maybe a
great.
corollary to that is, can we afford to do it? It seems like
The only concern that, from staff's perspective, that strikes me with that immediately, I like the idea of getting rid of it because it means I don't have to process those. But we've talked in the past about diversifying our revenue stream a bit so that we aren't fully reliant on tax revenue from these 6-year levies, especially as we look into potentially some longer term projects with the youth center study we're doing right now. I don't love just getting rid of a revenue stream entirely. There was discussion prior to the current levy about actually increasing those contributions a bit, so that they would be more substantive. The original intent of those ILA contributions was that that fund would be used for administrative work, so running the NPRSA. Back whenever a lot of that was done by volunteers or by people who contributed pretty minimal staff time, because all they really had to do was make sure that the bonds were getting paid once a year. That 16,000 was adequate. But at this point, when we have 2.1 full-time equivalent staff members, obviously that is not commensurate with the administrative cost.
So I saw the ILA contributions, and actually the line below it estimated other revenues as maybe a potential opportunity. And what I recognize between those two are those are not levy funds revenues. So they're not constrained by a lot of means. And a thought in my mind was, if there's other interest, if we want to take those apart, maybe put them into like an unconstrained strategic fund or something like that. I know it's not much, 21,000, but if we save that up over years, that might give us a little more flexibility in how we use those funds. That's not purely restricted to what the levy is proposed for. It's kind of like a little.
good point.
That makes sense.
Is it not?
I would, it's a bit muddy. So,
It's still under our auspices.
so the,
Well, we couldn't use that on Slurpees, but I imagine.
Yeah.
I guess.
It's more flexible than the levy measure. And
Yeah.
right now it's just being mixed in with the rest.
Right.
There's no-
I also
Yeah, it's an
wonder,
interesting
I'm only in we're looking at my second ever municipal budget right now, but I imagine it's easier to ask for an increase than a net new. So if we stop collecting it and then we're like, oh, wait, we could use it for X, Y, or Z, then we're like, hey, just kidding, can you do more? But you know what I mean? Like, I'm hesitant to end it, but I also don't know what the appetite for more would be like amongst everybody.
bit of background and also answer your question, Councilmember Hosses. The estimated other revenues, almost all of that, if not all at this point, is accrued interest from the money sitting in our general fund, which is that's all revenue from our current tax levy. And it's sort of muddy whether we could use it on things outside of the constraints of that levy. Our bond fund, for example, we're using still the monies that are in there, even though the principal's been paid off. But to sort of make things look good for the auditors and the public, we're only using those funds for this building because this is the building that those bond funds were raised for. So even though those other revenues aren't directly tied to the taxes in the levy measure, they're still kind of tied to that. In terms of the appetite for increasing funding to the NPRSA from the member agencies, and this was again proposed in 2019-ish. At that time, I believe all of the board members for the member agency said that it was okay to ask for, I believe it was like 60,000 a year instead of 16. But whenever that measure went back to the cities, some of the cities were okay with it. Some of the cities were not okay with it. It was sort of a mixed response. And I think part of that was the immediacy of the request because this was envisioned as sort of an emergency measure to be able to do the 2019 capital repairs plan. And there wasn't sort of a, starting 2 or 3 years from now, so you have time to work it into your budget. We would like this higher amount. It was sort of we need this right now. It might, I think, be more palatable if it was sort of a more advanced notice, but.
Certainly speak. Current discussions on city budgets, if there's not a lot of extra flowing around to just ask for an increase in the current budget cycle anyway. But I would agree that getting rid of it and then bringing it back in some form later would be more difficult.
Yeah, I feel like that amount is not meaningful and it's more administrative work than the cost justifies, in my opinion. But so I would suggest sunsetting it, but that's just me. You got a question?
Well, I was just thinking, as we go back and report to our councils, we might say what the ILA contributions are as of what 2019? And that there's been no increase over time. And just tell councils, we're trying to figure out our budget and we notice ILA contributions have not been increased since 2019, and then just let it sit and work.
It's actually been
Excuse me.
longer than that.
Okay,
Yeah.
but just let that sit and simmer.
Yeah, so I think that the ILA contributions are directly tied to the ILA that we have with each of the member agencies. So those are going to be, if I'm not speaking correctly, let me know, Barbara. Those
Will
are
do.
up for renegotiation in 2025, correct? At the end or 2026?
No, sorry. So that's written into the amendments to the founding ILA for the NPRSA, which will outlive the levy. So
Got
the
it.
permanent document that says, from now until the end of time or it is dissolved, this
Oh,
is the status.
Oh, I'm thinking of the Bothell ILA.
No, that's a different one. It's okay.
Mhm.
What I would also remind everyone is that the $16,000, that's not $16,000 for each member agency. That's $16,000 total.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's really more like between 2 and 4 for each
Right.
member agency.
Well, I think that would be a good message for just councils to hear and know that it's part of how we're trying to figure out navigating our way through the budget, and that councils ought to know how long it's been since it's been addressed, and then just let councils sit and ruminate on it.
I think we need it. That strikes me as really passive. I think we all need to be sharing the same message, whether it's we need more, we want to stop it.
Right.
But
I know.
just kind of stating,
Well, yes, the message that yes, we need more, and we're trying to figure out how to navigate through it. This is what we're facing. It hasn't been increased since.
Do we need more? I have not heard that. I have not heard that. And so if
Well, if
there.
the levy doesn't pass.
That's a
Never
different
getting-
issue.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a little bit of a hard sell to increase the levy rate and ask for an increase on the ILA. I mean,
$2 to $4 grand per agency though. It's
well, that's why I'd like to sunset. I mean, that I don't know. I'd like I said.
We didn't plan this ahead. I just,
Yeah.
did a spur of the moment, but I just know
I
it's,
think
sometimes it's a lot of work to get our department. The county's a big cumbersome bureaucracy, so it's maybe different, right? But to cough us a check for $2 grand, it takes a lot of work to find someone and explain to them it's an ILA. Over time, we've been able to find a budget person to do it, but sometimes they change and then it's what's this. So it's more of a administrative.
So for reference, just for
It's
all
not
of
like we
us,
can't afford it, the county. We can afford the $2 grand. It's not it. It's not,
Well,
are we spending money? So much money that.
and I wonder if it's not regularly going up.
so for a smidge more background, the 2017 Second Amendment to the ILA, or I guess it's second, like the Second Amendment to the amended ILA, so it's a mouthful, increased the total interlocal contributions from 8,000 to 16. This was, again, 7 years ago at this point. Previously, I think it was just at 8, from the sort of creation of the NPRSA, unless this was,
Like in the 80s?
give me 1 second to double check that, because I want to make sure that I'm not saying something incorrect and that this was not added with a subsequent amendment. But I'm pretty sure, yeah, it either was 8,000 from the start, or the 8,000 was added with one of the amendments sort of later on.
If we're willing to let it ride for a
Yes.
year or so until we know what happens with the levy. And then maybe broach the topic with our councils that right now we have this legacy ILA contribution that is very minimal. We are looking for a levy renewal, but without that levy renewal, the ILA is our funding stream. So just making councils aware that that is currently where we are. We don't seem to be looking to increase it now, but also it's our mechanism if the levy does not.
Thank you for saying
It's
that.
kind of a what heard is the levy.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I think letting it sit, and then I would love to get a recommendation from staff on revisiting with either an amount that would kind of make it worth cashing the checks, to be blunt, or, and then some kind of, like, we don't get a lot of agreements in front of us that don't have, I don't want to say cost of living, but a stagnant amount for a decade is very weird to me. And I think next year our comp plans will be done. We'll know a lot about the makeup of our cities and what it's expected to be in the next 20 years, depending on how everything aligns. We'll know a lot more about the financial environments we're in. Like, I know in Buffalo, we're just refunding our city hall bond, so we will own our city hall. And like, we can only do that if the interest rate goes down. Like, there's a lot that's like on the cusp. So I would love to come back and have like a really robust discussion on that, and either decide to strike it or to expand it. And then I think we'll know a lot more as cities at that point. I'm looking at you because you're in a different city, but you are too. And just kind of.
That makes sense.
Last piece of context, just to answer a question that was raised. The contribution of $8,000 was not original to the 1980s. That was added in 2007 and then increased to 16 in 2017.
And do we need a motion?
Every 10
for
years.
this?
Nope, this is just for conversation. If this all generally looks good to all of you, then we will bring a final budget document that looks a lot more formal than this to all of you in the public hearing in November.
You did such a good job. We talked a lot about this at the smallest amount.
Okay.
And what point do we talk about administrative structure? I need to bring that up, but I know that was a conversation in the past. Whether, this particular structure is sufficient.
We can start talking about it at this point.
I mean, I don't know if it's a budget issue or
So
maybe just a different kind of issue.
the ILA with Bothell that has me and Christine and Becky for 4 hours a week, working for the NPRSA, will be up for renewal in the end of 2025. The end of that coincides with the end of the levy cycle.
Okay.
So we can sort of start talking about that, but that's sort of a later conversation probably as we sort of ramp up to that. Also, as we understand sort of our needs moving into the next levy cycle, if we don't have a new levy, we kind of don't need a right, but probably don't need someone to expend the levy dollars that we don't have, but
Trying to increase anxiety, Barbara.
that's like me and Christine's life. We're terrified all the time. But anyway, if there aren't any other questions, I'll walk you through the financial report. So revenue, we are a little bit ahead of where we expect, which is just great. Where's my cursor? Sorry. Our general fund expenditures are a little lower than the sort of projected line, but as in the past, this is because we don't really have a good way to model exactly when we spend our money because it's all capital repairs and that's dependent on when the contracts get through and when the contractors can mobilize and all that sort of thing. We're expecting Q3 and Q4 are going to get us back up on track because we have 3 projects that we're going to be completing this year. But for now, at least, we haven't been spending money as fast as we're bringing it in. Our general fund cash, you can see when the tax dollars got deposited into our bank account. It's about the same as in May, around $920,000 or so. Bond fund, sort of the opposite. You can see in March, we expended some money out of there to pay for repairs to this building. We're expecting to do that again in Q3 or Q4. And then the grant fund, we're just slowly expending money out of there as invoices come in from our consultant. So the fund balances right now, we have $928,677.77 in our general fund. We have $116,639.37 in our bond fund, and we have $259,586.23 in our grant fund. We also still do have $1 million of capacity from the King County Interfund loan if we would happen to need it. But Christine and I do not expect that we're going to need to call on that contingency this year.
And that line will go away in December.
Yes.
Questions about this? Do report. Nice. On to
So I'm delivering a maintenance report, which, as I mentioned before, we're trying to get into written format for you. And that was the task for our maintenance coordinator, who has since resigned. So we're still working on that. But we are recruiting new maintenance coordinator right now. And so we'll get that back online when we get that new person in line online. But preventative maintenance is still moving forward. We just did boiler inspections, elevator inspections, fire protection systems inspected. So stuff's still staying on track even with that vacancy. Staff are pitching in to make sure that happens. I changed 3 paper towel dispensers today. So, yeah.
It's about the maintenance report, so I don't want to get you in the middle.
Yep.
But I was going to ask, I have been looking for ways to just volunteer as a person, but I can't walk or stand very much right now. So a lot of volunteering is like standing and doing things.
Yep.
Would it help to have someone just take what you have and put it in a report? Like, would that be a way to volunteer?
Sure.
Because I can type, that doesn't need legs.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Offer accepted.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Like, please
right.
reach out, and if
Yep.
you can show me the ropes, I can.
Yep. It's just getting it.
Easier to reach than your average Amanda.
Yep.
That's not my slogan. Don't.
Oh, I don't know that you.
It's going in the minute.
T-shirts in the future.
I also just wanted to commend Christine and Barbara and the contractors too, because doing a big project like replacing the envelope in the windows is tough when you're also trying to schedule around like Shavasana in a yoga class. And they've just been awesome to work with. Just as we have stuff come along. So so far this project's going well. It was I even got a friendly wave today from the person who was outside my second floor window pressure washing. So the project's going great so far from our perspective. So thank you for your help. Any questions for me?
Any idea, what is your process and timeline for staffing that new position look like?
We posted the position as soon as we knew we had a vacancy and didn't get the rights. Did not move forward with the first round. We reposted, and I'm actually retweaking the position slightly too to kind of make the skill set a little bit to get what we need. So we got new applicants today, so I'll have interviews next week.
Where do you post a job like that?
This one posts word of mouth, and then we just put it out through our internal networks as well. I'm sorry, not word of mouth. We post on Indeed. Sorry.
Walk outside your house, you're hired.
We post on Indeed, and then also it gets reposted to our HR subcontractor, but then word of mouth is we send those job announcements out to our 200, 400 volunteers and staff. That actually tends to be a better recruitment tool.
Christine, looks like you're on for updates on our side.
You're muted,
muted.
Chrissy.
Got it now. See, knew I would do it at least one time. So capital repairs update. Yeah, we are working diligently to try to wrap up the envelope repair. And fall is coming, rain is coming, and so we're trying to move this as swiftly as we can. I do want to we did have kind of a snafu that happened that I want to let the board know. So at some point 3 weeks ago, we had the contractor was doing the project and they're like, hey, well, this scope is, we didn't budget this in our estimate. And I'm like, well, it's in our design documents. And so we kind of had a back and forth that has been handled. But it increased the cost about $40,000 for the envelope project. It's still well below what we budgeted for this project, so we're still good. But there was an increase there in the estimate, and I thought it was fair. We want to be fair with our dollars. But also we don't want to put contractors in a position where they're eating costs and it's causing them a hardship, right? So we kind of met in the middle there and came up with an amount that was that wouldn't break our budget, but was also fair with the contractor. So we worked through that and we're good now. So we're moving forward and everything on site has been going well. I don't know if you guys got to look at the freshly stained beams at the front of the building and the fresh paint. I think it looks amazing. The handrails are going to be going in, I think, in the second week of October. So hopefully that's what that's scheduled for. So we'll get those handrails in and then paint, and we'll have some landscaping done here at the senior center building too. So it's going to look great for our going into the spring and doing the levy renewal. So I think it's gonna, and we're also, getting the photos. We took a lot of before photos so that in the levy report card, we'll have some nice before and after photos that we'll send out to all of the residents that live in the district. So I think we're on a good track. As far as that, I just wanted to talk about the youth community center and give you an update there. So Woodinville did disclose the parcel numbers and address to the properties that they are potentially acquiring. And so we'll send that information over to all of you all. We received that this morning or this afternoon. So we'll send that over to you all so you all have that information. What I would like to do is first, we've reached out to all of the counties and all of the cities. We've given all the member agencies until September 27th to respond back to make sure that all the properties that need to be in the site selection process are in that process. And so we are meeting with ARC to start that process. What we would like to do is request potentially the board meeting, maybe the 3rd or 4th week in October to talk about it. I think that our November meeting. We only have one, can you believe it? We only have one more meeting, in this year. And so, I was thinking maybe having a special meeting in October just to talk about the site selection process and what's going to be in there and how that goes, how we're going to be doing that and we're already working, ARC is already working on scoring the sites that we've gotten the thumbs up from other from who's ever responded. And so they're working in that, and hopefully we'll have a report for you guys probably the first couple of weeks in October, and then hopefully we can meet at the end of October to discuss. So that wraps up my update. Does anyone have any questions?
Christine, that's a little different than what we talked about when we talked about the plans in the schedule. So if they have sites that they're evaluating and they've evaluated them by the beginning of October, what we talked about was having time for us to bring them back to our councils in October and then discussing them here in November. That was the plan I thought we were going with. So let's, because if we're meeting in October, we won't have time to bring them to unless it was like very end, I suppose.
Yeah, that was just kind of out with like staff's recommendation. If we want to meet in November and have the discussion, we would need to, I guess, lengthen the November meeting then a little bit. I think that the site selection conversation is probably going to be more than just 30 minutes or even 20 minutes. I think that we're probably going to want to discuss these in length.
Right, and
But-
what the other agenda items is just the two hearings.
The other agenda items right now are just the 2 hearings.
Right.
Plus, we expect to have the contract with the levy consultant back for you. in
Yeah,
November.
we'll have to go through all of those, all of those interviews with you all, and then
It's up to this body if we need a special meeting. Okay.
So I'm a little confused because I thought we announced at our last meeting that we would be evaluating the site selection criteria at this meeting.
Right.
Now, clearly we've had a lot of work, so I could understand that, that timeline has stretched out. But I am a little concerned about pushing it too far into the future because our initial timeline with the consultant, we were already supposed to be at the second survey a month ago. And so if we don't have the conversation about site selection and narrow it down to the 3 that we said we would send out in the second survey until November, then we are really 6 months behind on that process.
So I just don't think we have the sites. We don't have the sites yet.
I know we have our list ready.
Yeah,
For
and,
Montville. Like, it sounds like we're gonna have it by the 27th.
and the counties will
But
respond.
don't they have to score it?
It's,
They have to do that.
we don't expect it to take that long for the consultant to score it. They need some time, but it's not going to be a month-long process for them to do that.
And then my other question is, what do you anticipate having to take? So my understanding with the process was that once we scored it, that this body would say, these are the top 3 based on these scores, and they would go to the second survey. That is my recollection of our discussion. I could be off on that. So I was just kind of curious what you anticipated taking back to your council before we could move forward. Because, it wasn't a final decision in.
Yeah. I was just thinking councils would want to have input onto the sites. Is the second survey, they get a choice between sites?
The second
Okay,
survey is
that's
sort
the
of
criteria.
robust. It would include site preference.
Okay.
It would narrow down program a little bit, and it would start talking about cost. We
Okay,
really
so
narrow in on cost.
So
in
do
the third
people,
one.
can people meet end of October then if we want to do that? Then I would, what we talked about was if we wanted to meet in October, we would move the 2 hearings, but I don't think we have time. I'm just trying to avoid excess meetings when we don't have an agenda. So, you know, the hearings, as you said, nobody comes, you know, very few people come
They
to them. So they're
should be
very, very brief.
straightforward.
So
We
I
did have a
I'd rather replace the November with October if we can do it. But if we need both, we need both. That's fine. I mean,
Christine's concern with having the two meetings is mostly just to ensure that we have time for a robust discussion around the youth center siting.
sure.
And we aren't sort of rushing
so
to get
third
the rest of the agenda.
Wednesday in October would be, and in November, we're one bill. I just want to remind everybody.
Yeah.
We'd be in Cameron. The 16th is the third Wednesday. Does that work?
And we can also have it at a different time or a different date, or it doesn't have to be like our regular normal times. If that works, then it works. But we're open to doing it. It could be a virtual option where we just get on in the middle of the day, or whichever works for you all. And we can set a poll up if that works easier. We can set a poll for all of you
Well,
to
let's
send.
just see if this works. I was not seeing any negatives.
I like 5 on Wednesday just because I have like
Yeah.
childcare on Wednesday.
Yeah, 5 with the option to be remote. I mean, it looks like everybody's nice. Well, that's assuming that we have the criteria and you send it out in advance. Okay,
Sites. Chair, so-
yeah.
I think you guys maybe reached out to my office for potential sites. I don't know that the county really. There's a whole lot of land left in the areas.
I think what we're specifically looking at with county land is there's a 4-ish acre parcel in Kenmore that the county owns.
Yeah, I think Kenmore sent it over to us, and so we just wanted to make sure, I guess, if we were going
Four
to.
is the two properties together. So 4 would be the Mary's Place and the privately owned old fire station.
Oh, okay, so
Okay.
But
Our information says 4.7 for just Mary's Place.
So yeah, Mary's Place is 4.7, but a lot of it isn't
It's
usable.
the wetlands.
Yeah, it's the wetlands.
Last. It's long term.
one building, they have any, you know,
I would-
county land?
I wanted to make sure that we included what we call the carve out site at Maine.
So that's off the table.
Okay.
So one, we're about a year or two away from getting to where we would do something with it.
Okay.
And 2, the maintenance of the rest of it is upwards of $200,000 a year. The active use parcel is only 4 acres, but it has to fund that. And that's not fair to put that on the community center.
That's good, but yeah, that 4 acres has to generate the upkeep for the rest of Wayne.
We have like a pre-COVID study about that, and I think now we're preparing to revisit it.
Well, that would be if you guys are developing it, right? I mean, when
I mean, we might, our council is still.
Who
a
owns,
ways out.
doesn't the county own it?
Nope.
With you guys have a right to buy? If I've forgotten.
that was the
I'll have to-
Proterra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe we bought it with county help for Terra grants, lots of stuff. What I do know is there's only the 4 acres where you could do active use, but even like a dog park is too active. Like there's still restrictions to protect the rest of it.
I'll look at it. But you can see if the revenue is the issue. But otherwise it would make sense from a geographic location and all that.
Geographical, it's perfect,
I mean,
but
That's a different issue.
The NPRSA, if we're gonna, I mean, you could see a deal where, okay, we'll write the city of Bonneville a check. I mean, I wouldn't have 200,000 in commitments, take a side off the table. That's the
Exactly.
issue.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is just we haven't discussed it as a council.
that's true, because we've got to we're gonna be putting a plan together for.
And we're bringing back larger discussions. But yeah, it's iffy. I will say personally, I appreciated, I'm not sold on any site, but the Woodville site being in the smack middle of NPRSA
Yeah,
is
that was
really
pretty
good.
compelling. Well, I agree. I just want to make sure we have a good
There's like a
set of
great
sites.
bus there. I mean, it's a bit of a walk, but there's a trail and
I think, so once the light rail is fully operational from Redmond into Seattle, the realignment of the bus will go past there. But the current bus route is not super, I mean, it's a few blocks, but it's not like right. So it's kind of like looking at the future, you know, in 5 years, I think there'll be much better bus service
We
there,
also
but
shortened it up. It used to go to your park and ride, now it goes to Bothell. Buses, the routes we can
the
fix.
current routes are like
just thinking the bus can go to you, the Buffalo.
future routes.
There's also concern with the 4-acre lot of the car traffic going in and out of drop on that curve. It's kind of a
It's a
dicey. curve.
2-lane road. It is
It's
narrow
really
bridge.
weird. And we-
There's also may not work, but I'm just thinking, but all that could be addressed in the scoring. What I'm thinking, council member, is folks over in Kenmore might say, or on that side of the district, did any sites over here get looked at or anything in Bothell?
Yeah.
I think we do ourselves a service if we have a broad set of things and knock them out on the scoring, because it seems like traffic and feasibility. I mean,
Because otherwise they're gonna come up. Right? In
yeah, then
discussion,
did you look at
and-
this?
Right. And trust me, we've done some citing and boy, if you're not transparent about what's on and off the table, it's.
People
Your
get
public
frustrated.
works.
And
Yeah.
it's not having a robust community discussion at this point of what we do with that land. We also, we want to be able to engage our community about that because that's an important thing to a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just, we don't want to say community center before people have had a chance to weigh in either. So it's kind of one thing or the other. And then I really want to be hesitant about picking properties in other cities and being like, use it for this, because that's, I don't want, you don't want to overstep. So.
I think that goes to Councilmember Schreiber's point of I think it's important that your councils have a chance to dialogue on these sites. This is a 50-year project. I'm not as worried about a month or two. I think we gotta get it right.
Yeah, and I, yes, I hear what you're saying. You don't want to get out in front of your citizens. But your citizens are also saying they want a community center. So,
Right.
there's. You both.
So here's another thought, and I need a land, people who understand soils, but if we were to put a swimming pool on that piece of property and the land, because there's a lot of water around it, because there are 2 creeks that feed into it.
We need that.
Yeah, there's, and I can't remember if it's part of the liquefaction zone or not, but putting a pool in soil that's saturated a lot of the time,
Well, that's a
is
score.
it feasible?
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. So, but I mean, to me, that's where that scoring rubric comes into play. It's like, it may be wiped out because of exactly that issue, right? I mean, it's just not.
Our site has a lot of compelling, at least at first glance,
Yeah.
I would say taking a broad swath of options and scoring them, as long as we are very clear on our scoring criteria and that part. The city of Woodinville, obviously our council has had a discussion about this. We've weighed in, we've invested funds in acquiring these lands. So, I mean, I guess that is our perspective that we were excited about participating in this process and certainly, yeah, have made our collective council wishes known on it. So,
May I ask generally where the land is?
yes, the address was just shared.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that's the general, but the specific address was shared in the last 24 hours. And if you're familiar with downtown Woodinville, you know where Homeward Pet is. It's not Homeward Pet, but it is the property adjacent, 3 parcels adjacent to
It's where
that.
the honey place is, and
No,
then not that far.
no,
Not that
it's
far
between the
east.
2.
Okay,
There's kind of underutilized.
Between Homer Pet and Chuck Wright.
Yeah, there's a vacant property. There's a property with landscape materials stored on it, and there is the northwest flooring.
and it's kind of right on and off. getting on.
It's right next to the
522.
exit to 522. Yes. It's also within walking distance of Woodinville Fields, which there's probably some opportunities for
True.
synchronity there.
People who like to frequent Glendon's.
All right, so we've got, I mean, it's just sensitive to time here. I think we've had our report. We have a next meeting scheduled. We'll get
Oh,
our
there's
site
one more thing.
information. I would encourage each city to
One more
put up whatever sites could possibly meet, and we have put up our Mary's Place, could possibly meet criteria.
What's your one more thing, Christine?
Oh, just the next slide.
Oh, yeah. This will be quick. So at the last meeting, we discussed the mission and vision subcommittee, and
Oh, right.
board member Dodd is the subcommittee chair. We need 2 additional board members.
Love multi-city representation. Yeah, I'm here for the discussion of the why of this, but.
This is sort of just in terms of long-term visioning, what the objectives of this organization are, what its sort of purposes are. We don't have a mission and vision statement, and we've been around for 30 years. Just in terms of thinking like how we state the direction of the organization as we move into the next levy and beyond, we want to have some sort of concrete statements about what is the NPRSA, what are we about?
And then also how we make decisions. We have a 2-year, it's a 2-year term for the board. We have a lot of turnover, and so year after year. And so I think it helps staff and people that are here constantly to have our board of directors or have a set of values or mission or vision that our board members can reflect back on to say, okay, this is how we're making decisions. And this is, it's just a base point of how our thinking should be as an organization. And so we don't have that currently. And so we thought it would be important. It came up in one of the discussions about the future of the NPRSA at the levy planning. And so,
Amanda's chair, I'm happy to be on.
You're gonna certainly find someone who didn't come to the meeting.
Comfortable.
I'm sorry.
Right. No, I think I'm happy to step on if,
Virtual.
yeah, we can do it.
If the second head appears, it's just my kid.
That's all.
We will have a child or a dog. in the back.
Any other things for the good of the order?
We have our future meeting is November 20th. Where did we land on the October 16th? Is that awesome?
And I'm assuming here unless, not.
I will confirm that time, and then again, remember that this November meeting will be in.
If you guys want to pay 10 more,
Yes.
10 more staff, I mean,
Maybe we should go look at the.
Figure out where that is.
So we're meeting at 6:30 in November.
Oh, the senior center. Oh. Yeah, does somebody want to reach out to her? I mean, do you want to see if it's available?
It's available.
Yeah.
Let's see what we're talking about.
Okay,
So that's
that's
the
great.
October 16th. Is that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
at 5.
It's been a while since I.
Can we build a little tour into it?
It's a
It's
real
little.
little tour.
Be sure.
It's about this.
Yeah. Very.
Would
It
we
takes a minute to get to the annex.
doing it in the?
We have to do the annex because that's set up for hybrid.
Okay.
There's a pillar in the middle of the room, but it's choose your seat
All
carefully.
right. Beautiful.
Beautiful rhododendron.
All right. Unless there's an objection, I think this meeting is adjourned. It's a little bit late, sorry.
Still daylight.
Yes.
Don't forget to take your Oktoberfest passports.
Yes,
For
there's-
you and
Kids
yes.
are bringing them.
Also, I just want to point out that Senior Center is also participating, is leading the paint and sip activity when they tap the
Which
cake
is like what?
tomorrow.